All right, today is Sunday, January 9th, 2022. It's going to be the first part of this rear end video. Ordered this rear end from Brent with Pitbull Hydraulics. I know he has a Facebook and an Instagram account. He's out of Louisville, Kentucky. It's custom made. It's a 4.9-inch with a 350 gear, positive traction center section, 31 spline axles, drum brakes, and the wishbones that he makes. So this wishbone, as most of you know, is going to replace the panhard bar and the banana bar. And it's already cut to length from flange to flange. It measures flange to flange. It measures 53 inches. So once it's all said and done and put together, wheel surface to wheel surface, it should be 58, which is 1 inch shorter or more or narrow on each side than the stock Impala rear end. The stock Impala rear end flange to flange is 56 inches, and when that's assembled, wheel surface to wheel surface is 60 inches. So any of you guys out there that want to run skirts, I mean, it's pretty common knowledge, but there might be some people out there that don't know that if you want to run skirts on 13x7 or any by 7 wheels, 13x7, 14x7 in the rear, with hydraulics, you have to narrow the rear end. You can probably get away with it without narrowing it, but it's going to be really close. You can probably shave the inside of the skirt lip and take it slow on turns on a stock car. But if it has hydraulics with the panhard bar, stock rear end, you're not going to be able to run skirts with 7-inch wide wheels. It's going to pop that driver's side skirt off as soon as you lift the car up. And if you drop it down too low, it's going to pop the passenger side skirt off. So you can narrow the stock rear end, which I've done several times, or I've had done, I should say. I did one myself, but I usually have it done. You can run a Curry. You can run a Lincoln Versailles, which is 57.5, I believe, or I'm sorry, 58.5, wheel to wheel. You can run a Toyota rear end, which some people run, which is I've never ran one, but I know it's really narrow. The problem that you run into when you narrow the rear end is that if you go too narrow, you can't run stock wheels because it's going to rub the inside of the frame on your spring perch, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. If the rear end is too narrow and you're running stock wheels like that, if your tire's too fat, it's going to hit right here. So you're kind of limited if you want to take your car somewhere to get painted or something. You want to put the dummy tires on. You might run into a problem if the tires are too wide. So anyways, a lot of people might wonder why I opted for drum brakes. Honestly, I've ran disc brakes on a few Impalas, and I don't notice a difference other than a selling point or a talking point. Literally, I noticed zero difference in the performance. So went with drum brakes. Drum brakes help with brake dust, of course, but usually with the discs in the rear, you have to grind the caliper. I know there's a company out in California that's making these rear brake kits for Impalas that you don't have to grind the calipers because they're already small. So I don't know the company though. But anyways, this thing is bulletproof. It's got the shock mounts in the back that he made, and we run extended shocks. But man, this rear end is bulletproof. That pumpkin weighs at least twice as much as a stock Impala. The whole thing together is about twice as heavy as a stock Impala. So pretty beefy. They're not all made the same. Brent knows what he's doing over there. I mean, he's been in the hydraulic game and the frame wrap game for a long time. So I'm real excited. I got this in over the past few days. The rear end actually showed up today on a Sunday, which I'm surprised. But what I'm going to do, or what I need to do, is I need to get this thing coated so that it doesn't start rusting. I mean, the pumpkin came a few days ago, and it's so humid that you can see it's already starting a little flash rust. So I'm going to be getting these things in SPI epoxy tomorrow, or start prepping tomorrow for that. And then probably coat them in some sort of black ceramic paint or something like that. I don't think I'm going to go chrome on this car. So anyways, this is going to be part one. Like I said, I hope you guys enjoy the information I just shared. There's a lot of people out there that don't understand the whole rear end thing, that you can run a stock rear end. I've done it numerous times and I've never had a problem. But if you start putting a lot of batteries in, or you got a full frame wrap with that stock rear end and that weight, you're going to start walking the axles out, and you could turn into a big problem. You can crash, you can damage your quarter panel, you can tear up your tire and wheel. You know, you can kill yourself. So on the 60, I wanted to be worry-free and not have any issues. So I did a little bit of homework, and as far as the whole custom 9-inch, Brent is by far the cheapest, and I would say the best. I mean, you can get a Curry, they're about $1,000 more than what he charges. So shout out to Brent, appreciate it. Looking forward to running this thing, and I'll bring you guys back here in a couple days once I start spraying epoxy on it. All right, today's Monday, January 10th, 2022, and I'm going to get these things coated in epoxy. I washed them with soap and water yesterday, let them dry overnight. I'm going to follow up with some Waterborne wax and grease remover and some SPI epoxy. So what I'm going to do right now is use some green tape. I'm going to tape off in here. We don't want to get too much material in there. I'm going to tape off these threads. I'm not too worried about the center section. That's pretty much it. I had this thing hanging from the ceiling on some chains, but I left it on some jack stands overnight. So when it comes time to spray, it's going to be hanging. So let me tape these up. I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to do a little time lapse of the spraying of this stuff. I know there have been some comments of people want to see the actual work being done, so I'm going to try and do that. I don't really know too much about the editing part, but we're going to try and get it done. So I think I'm going to set that center section on this red cart and probably maybe lift it up from that chain over there. Got to get a little situated, but you can see how this stuff just flash rust. I mean, I washed it so it was wet, but it's crazy. It's crazy. So I don't want it sitting around the shop getting flash rusted when there's no need. And unfortunately, I don't have black epoxy. I have gray, so I'm going to epoxy it today, gray, and then follow up with some ceramic Eastwood stuff that I have. So I'm going to get these things masked up and set my little tripod up, and I'll bring y'all back. All right, so here we are. I got it set up. You got to excuse my little paint room here. It's pretty filthy. We had to bring some plants in because it froze the other night. But what I'm going to be spraying is these calipers, which I don't think I'm going to hit these with epoxy. I think I'm going to just go with that ceramic stuff. I got the wishbone here. I got the rear end pumpkin, third member, posi unit, whatever you want to call it. Just kind of got it propped up so that I can get around the edges. Got the rear brake drums, which appear to be universal. And then the rear end housing. So what I'm going to be using is SPI Waterborne wax and grease remover. They recommend it for bare metal. It has a high alcohol content. Like I said in previous videos, you can tell when you spray it. You can smell it. So whenever I use this stuff, I like to be really liberal with it, and just let me adjust this here. Just hose it on. Hose it on, let it run off. You can't really put too much. Like I say, yesterday I already washed these with soap and water and a red Scotch-Brite. They recommend for this epoxy that you DA it, but I scuffed it up pretty good yesterday, so that's not a good idea. Let's probably going a little overboard by epoxying these. You could simply just rattle can it, but I figure why not. I recommend after this Waterborne stuff, you wait 30 minutes before spraying any epoxy on it. I guess so it fully evaporates. Now, probably on the body of the car or a panel, I will definitely follow those instructions, but today I'm going to wait about 10 minutes. So I'm using a microfiber. You could use the blue shop towels, but I've noticed that the blue shop towels, which I used to use them religiously, used to be all about the blue shop towels. Those, they come on a roll, so they're AutoZone or whatever. Seem like it leaves behind lint. Now, like on stuff like this, it's probably not the end of the world, but definitely when you're painting a car, you would want to get the cleanest surface possible. Now this is like cast iron, so it's probably gonna leave some lint. I'm just gonna kind of try and pat it dry. Like I say, yesterday I washed them, soap and water, pretty good, twice actually. So I'm using a microfiber because like I say, I used it on the last job, and man, I got really clean results when I was spraying the patch panels for the car, for the 60. 1/4 panel, I used the blue shop towel. 1/4 panel, I used this, and noticeable difference in lint. It was noticeable. It's about 60 degrees outside. So the key with the SPI stuff is you got to keep it above 50 degrees. So I plan to put a little space heater in here tonight because I'm going to come back either tomorrow or on Wednesday and follow up with the ceramic stuff. So let me put you guys down. I'm going to clean this rear end, bring you back when I start mixing up the paint. All right, so I got it mixed up here. I actually did go ahead and DA the rear end with 80 grit. Once I was done cleaning it, I realized it was a little too slick. So I just hit it with the DA, took 5 minutes, scratched it up a little bit. That way the epoxy has something to bite into. Now, once again, we gotta understand this is the rear end of the car. It's underneath, so it's not the end of the world, but might as well take the extra 5 minutes to get a little better prep. So I just mixed up 8 ounces of the gray SPI epoxy. It's mixes 1-to-1, so it's 4 ounces of epoxy and 4 ounces of activator. I'm not going to reduce it because we want it full strength to protect these parts. You're supposed to let it induce as long as possible. Probably let it sit for maybe 15 minutes. You could let it sit like 24 hours if you want. Actually, I think the pot life is like 72 hours. So this stuff is really good stuff. I think personally it's the best on the market. They're not paying me to say that, but it's sandable. It sprays super easy. I mean, a beginner can spray it. I mean, it sprays like spray paint. One of the key things when using this stuff is you don't want to go too heavy. If you go too heavy, it's going to crater, which isn't the end of the world. You can wait for it to dry and sand it off and put more. It's really easy to work with. It's really good stuff. So let this sit. I'm going to get my fans going and set up my tripod so you guys can watch me spray this stuff. It's really easy. I'm going to spray it with this my epoxy gun, which is the Vilbis SGK. Probably going to spray it around between 20 and 24 psi. Probably 2 turns out on the fluid and a full fan. So I know this contraption here looks kind of sketchy, but I have hung a few hoods in the same fashion and they didn't fall, so it'll work. This thing is really beefy, really beefy. Can't really scuff the drums because they're like cast iron, it seems, so there's really no point in that, or the pumpkin. So just scuff the rear end, a little bit on the wishbone. So let me get set up and bring you guys back. right, guys, so here we are, 2 coats later. I didn't record the second coat because it was just like the first one. But mixed up 8 ounces and I had about 1 ounce left, so we're good on that. So this thing is in 2 coats of epoxy now. Got my little space heater, it's 61 degrees. These parts are 61 degrees, so the heater should keep them above 50 overnight. And then tomorrow I'm gonna come back with this product, high temp engine paint. My buddy left it here, so I'm gonna borrow it. I have a gloss and I have a matte. Don't know which one I'm gonna do yet. I'm gonna sleep on that. I would debate and I would argue that this epoxy is more durable than powder coat, or at least as durable. So I could have powder coated this stuff, but I don't know. I had the epoxy and I wanted to experiment, and I really like this engine paint stuff. I did brake calipers and some front end stuff on the 62 frame that I have next door here. Pretty impressed with it. So as far as the frame goes, I'm probably going to powder coat the frame, but we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. So I'll bring you guys back tomorrow whenever wrap these things up. All right, folks, today is Wednesday, January 12th, 2022, and I'm getting ready to go ahead and top coat these parts that I got in epoxy on Monday. I've had my space heater on in here since we sprayed them in epoxy, and it's been at night in the 40s, and today the high I think is 58, and it is a toasty 72 degrees in here right now. So that space heater works really good. Also, the spray foam insulation is a big help. So these parts have been sitting. Nothing has touched them. Nothing has changed. They've been curing for 2 days though. So right now they're just in the gray SPI epoxy as previously shown. So what I'm going to be doing is spraying this Eastwood stuff. My buddy left it here, like I said before. I have a gloss and a matte. The matte is brand new. The gloss is almost brand new. And for the last 2 days, I've been racking my brain about what route I want to go. My buddies with the Red Rocket and Bobby G say that I need to chrome all this stuff, but unless we're having a car wash fundraiser, that ain't happening. So I'm stuck with 2 options, gloss or matte. And since I couldn't decide, I'm going to end up doing both. I think I'm going to do the rear end housing in matte. I think I'm going to do the brake drums in matte and the wishbone in matte. And I think I'm going to do the center section in gloss. Time to break it up a little bit. When it comes time to the frame, I think the frame is going to be done in a matte or a satin, and maybe a little bit of gloss here and there. I know the gearbox is gloss black, 500 CPP. The ball or the tie rods, they're black, so it's going to kind of be a little bit of contrast between matte and gloss on the chassis. So yeah, I'm going to end up doing both today. I've never sprayed this stuff. Well, I did spray, I'm lying. I did spray the gloss black on some brake calipers. I've never sprayed the matte. I've never sprayed matte black, period, ever. I've never sprayed single stage. I've never sprayed anything that doesn't have a clear coat on top. So it's gonna be first time doing that. So I'm gonna be learning. You guys are gonna be learning with me if you've never done this. Eastwood, they make okay stuff. Really have nothing bad to say about Eastwood. I don't know if they're quite considered professional level, but they're definitely good products. I like the gloss black on the calipers that I painted. So anyways, enough talking. Let me get set up. I'm going to be spraying them here with the LPH 400 orange cap. Probably 20, 25 PSI, something like that. Looks like it mixes 4-to-1, not reduced. So I'm gonna mix up 2 little cups here. I'll bring you guys back. right, so here we are, one coat. Man, I'm really liking the matte. I'm really digging that finish. First coat, I think I'm gonna go ahead and do 2 coats. I mean, it kind of lays out exactly how black epoxy would be, which is exactly what I would have used had I had any black epoxy, but all I had was gray. I know I had said that I was gonna do most of it in matte, but I got to spraying that gloss and I got carried away. And I went ahead and did the wishbone in gloss. So that's what it's going to be. And then the pumpkin, of course. I mean, this thing is, you really can't tell how the stuff laid out because it's so, the finish on it is like cast iron. So it's so porous that you really can't tell what's going on. But as far as the Eastwood stuff, brake caliper is kind of tricky. I have to get a little bit better up here, but I got plenty of paint. So that's the first coat. As far as the product, I can say it's pretty thick for a 1.3. I know you guys, if you watched, I was adjusting the gun a lot, adjusting the fan for them calipers a lot, and then on here is adjusting a lot. It's really thick. Probably you can probably get away with a 1.4 or even bigger than that, or you can reduce it and thin it out. But I know it looked like I was running it when I was spraying it on the sections here, but I was just hitting the air to keep this thing from spinning around. But man, I'm digging the matte. All right. Thinking once the frame is wrapped, I'm gonna be painting that myself instead of powder coat. I really like that finish, man. Anyways, let me get mixing up again and we'll do the second coat. All right, folks, so that's a wrap. I didn't really record the second coat because it's much like the first coat. I will say that on the second coat, on the rear end, I went around the edges first. I did all the hard to reach areas first. Make sure I got all those, and then I coated the easy to reach areas. But here's a quick look. Really digging the matte look. And then the gloss on the drums. While I was spraying, I went ahead and decided to do the drums gloss because the backing plates are gloss. So, brake calipers with 2 coats, 2 full coats. I'll be putting those back together once they dry. Those go on a 62 roller. And here's the wishbone with 2 coats. I actually had leftover of each paint, but not much. It wasn't a complete waste. And then, of course, the pumpkin again. Or a third member, whatever you want to call it. Probably could have taped off the whole gear assembly, but I don't think that a little bit of paint is going to stop those gears from turning. So overall, my review on the Eastwood stuff is it's good stuff. It's definitely thick. It's not base coat. It fills a lot more than base coat does. In fact, I had a little bit of cratering on the epoxy over here in this area, and it filled it. So yeah, I'm gonna mix and match the flat or the matte or the satin or whatever with the gloss on the chassis. Not gonna get too carried away with the whole paint thing on the chassis, but just to give it a little bit of contrast is what I'm shooting for. And then on the motor, gonna kind of make it look a little modernish. So we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But appreciate you guys watching. This is gonna be a wrap for this video. I guess the next set on this whole Ford 9 will be once I'm assembling it and mocking up the chassis. It's probably the only thing that's going to be painted in the mock-up stage, mainly because I didn't want it to start rusting and then cause a whole bunch more work. So I had to get it coated in something. So once it's dry, I'll be wrapping it up to protect it or whatever during the assembly stage of the chassis. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more work. Thanks for watching.